Sarah is a Chicago police detective who is certain that her main suspect, Colin, has not yet left the country. He shot 15 police officers, and Sarah has not been able to find Colin for a year, so she has long lost sleep and peace. Her partner advises her to get some rest, because he thinks that Colin has long fled to Singapore. Sarah calls up a holographic screen with a voice command, which shows the bill for a burger, and with one short movement of her finger, she pays it. Then she leaves the Retro Mitchell's cafe, gets into her car and gives the autopilot a command at normal speed home. Later in the evening, Sarah looks at the city at night and drinks whiskey to distract herself from her heavy thoughts. Her wife Katie comes home from work and sees, as usual, a depressed Sarah. Katie is sure that Sarah needs a distraction, so she bought the latest sleep simulator device called Real Life. Sarah has already tried earlier versions, and carefree walks on the beach did not impress her, but Katie assures that Real Life is a breakthrough in technology and full immersion in an alternative reality. Based on the thoughts and dreams hidden in Sarah's subconscious, the simulation will generate a world for her that cannot be called just a dream. Katie tells that it will be like real life, only different. Sarah says that she does not deserve Katie, who is too good for her. She installs the device and immerses herself in the real life. A man wakes up at night on the floor of a warehouse somewhere on the outskirts of Chicago. His name is George, because that's how his friend calls him. He asks George to get up, and the man tries to figure out who he is, where he is and what is happening around him. Before he can figure all this out, George and his friend are captured by some armed men. Their leader, Colin, says that all this could have been avoided. But now it's too late, and now George's finger will be cut off. But George suddenly manages to break free and, together with his friend, neutralize Colin's men. But the leader manages to escape. George and his friend rush to their car to quickly leave before the cops arrive. George tells the autopilot, "Take us home." Top speed, and when the car doesn't respond, he offers his friend to get behind the wheel. George's memory gradually returns, and he remembers that his friend's name is Chris. George says that his mind is clouded, so Chris takes his friend home and calls a doctor. George is examined by an old friend, Paula, who says that there are no serious head injuries, but there could have been a mild concussion. George remembers that he is the owner of a large software company, which he created in 2012, and its assets are estimated at $4 billion. Paula offers to stay and monitor his condition, but George sees her off. Chris comes up into the apartment and says that the cops failed to catch Colin, when suddenly George has new fragmentary memories. All that pops into his head is a gun and a shot, but still, why they were looking for Colin, George does not remember. Chris suggests that George take a break and try out the latest development, a vacation without leaving home. A mask that generates dreams is the first invention in its field, and George turns it on, plunging into an alternative world. Sarah wakes up and goes to Mitchell's cafe, where she assures her colleague that Colin has not left the United States and is in the city now. The police officer does not believe this, and Sarah has nothing to back up her guesses. Today, Sarah's food seems tasteless and bland, and her mind seems clouded. Even her partner notes that he has never seen Sarah so absent-minded. She says that the dream simulation is so real, as if Sarah were living her another life while in a dream. While they are having breakfast, the FBI intercepts Colin's messages, who is making an appointment in the city, and Sarah's partner receives a notification about this. The partner quickly gets up from the table, but Sarah stops him and asks if Colin was caught too easily. But the practical partner thinks that it is a sin to complain about this. They arrive at the place where Colin is supposed to meet his people, in the warehouse area, on the outskirts of the city. Sarah recognizes this place because yesterday George woke up here. Colin is here with his people, and Sarah hears him saying that he plans to blow up the city hall. Her partner goes to the car to call for special forces, and Sarah is noticed by one of the bandits who hits her with a taser. George enters the courthouse, accompanied by Chris. At the preliminary hearing, the prosecutor wants to know why George has been running around the outskirts of the city with a gun in his hands for 3 months. George remembers the reason. A man named Colin shot his wife and filmed it on video, so George wants revenge at any cost. Later, Paula examines George again and comes to the conclusion that there was a concussion after all. As a result, he now has memory lapses, which will gradually recover. George finds it strange that he does not remember what exactly his wife looked like. and asks Paula to help with this. She shows an old photo from her phone, after which George freezes and then cries. His late wife Katie is the same Katie who is his wife, or rather Sarah's wife, in virtual reality. Thus, Paula learns about his another life where Katie is alive, and George adds that he constantly sees fragments of both of these worlds. Paula refers to the effect of déjà vu as a consequence of a concussion, when both hemispheres of the brain interact with each other with a micro delay, and ordinary events are interpreted as experienced twice. In a healthy person, this effect occurs extremely rarely, but George does not agree that this is all just déjà vu. For him, that world of the future with Katie alive is also real. Paula says that George's reality is the 21st century, and he is definitely not a lesbian cop from the future. Also, constant exits to the simulation prevent George from recovering, so Paula advises to suspend the generated dreams until he is fully recovered. George himself no longer knows where his real world is, but still agrees not to use the device. As soon as Paula leaves, George activates the device and Sarah wakes up in the hospital, where she sees her partner and Katie. They congratulate Sarah on arresting all the criminals along with Colin. And here's what happened. Sarah distracted them and the special forces caught the bandits by surprise. Upon returning home, Sarah continues to doubt that her reality is real, because everything here is too perfect. A futuristic world, flying cars, and a beautiful wife who constantly wants sex. All this is more like a man's fantasy, and wanting such a reality is much more logical than living in the body of a suffering widower. But Katie does not agree that she is not real. Katie believes that the program generated reality based on Sarah's acute sense of guilt, so she ended up in the body of a suffering widower. She advises Sarah to go to the clinic tomorrow, where she will have her memories from the simulations deleted. At night, Sarah can't sleep because she continues to be tormented by doubts, namely, none of the realities gives away that it is a simulation. Sarah thinks it would be useful to figure out once and for all where her real life is. While Katie sleeps, Sarah puts on the device and immerses herself in the simulation. George comes to in the city center, looks around, and notices the familiar Mitchell's Retro Cafe. He is met by a waiter who addresses the guest by name. George is here often, so he is asked whether to prepare the order as usual or not. Chris comes into the cafe next, says that they have 2 business lunches and the friends sit down to dinner. The hamburger and fries are exactly the same as in Sarah's life, and it is in this place that both realities converge, which helps George remember more. He tells Chris that his memory has returned, after which he quickly leaves the cafe. George comes home and asks how he could have known that Paula would be waiting for him here. Paula is standing by the window and answers that she came because Chris was worried and called her. George claims that this 21st century world is a simulation, so he says that he will sell his company and give all the money to charity. If this is a dream, then what difference does it make to George what will happen here, because all this is unreal? Paula, predictably, does not consider herself an illusion and says that George is going crazy. He goes to the bed to return to Sarah's reality, but does not find the mask with the simulation, because Paula has already hidden it. She warns that another dive can leave George in a coma forever, because the brain may not withstand such a load. But he still wants his mask back to quickly return to his real world, where Katie is alive and Sarah has a great life. Paula gives the device back and for the last time asks George to change his mind, touching his hand. Suddenly George remembers how he and Paula made love. She reminds him that they had love affair after Katie disappeared, but Paula felt that she would never replace George's late wife. Paula adds that George was developing a state-of-the-art encryption system for the government that could crack even the nuclear codes of enemy countries. One day, a man named Colin approached George and offered to share the technology. George refused, and then Colin kidnapped Katie, but he didn't ask for money. He needed the hacking program. George understood the risks and offered billions for Katie's life, but not the program. And then Colin made a video where he shot Katie. Paula says that this is, alas, George's real life, unlike his fantasies about a living Katie and flying cars, but he doesn't want to accept it. George cries and says that he really doesn't deserve that perfect life, and Paula adds that she won't stop him. If George falls into a coma, he will live the rest of his life in Sarah's simulation. George says that he deserves his own life justly, as a punishment for his sins. He puts the device on the floor and smashes it with his foot. At this moment, in the hospital of the future, Sarah's neural pathways close, and the doctor says that he will no longer be able to bring her back to life. Katie observes the remains of Sarah's brain projection, where sobbing George hugs Paula, accepting that reality for the real one. Sarah's partner asks why she chose that path, so hard and bitter. Katie answers Sarah was looking for punishment for her sins, both imaginary and real, and it seems she found it.